Good morning, dear students. Today our lesson is about properties of matter. We previously talked about the matter, and we said that the matter is everything that has mass or take up space or has volume too. And we know that matter can be a form of solids or liquids and gases. So this matter has different properties. Maybe it will be a physical property, or maybe it will be a chemical property. So let's start with the physical one. The physical property is a trait of matter that can be observed or measured without changing the chemical composition of the matter. So I'm talking about only what I can observe from this matter, the shape or the size or whatever, the outside look, without talking about the composition of the matter itself. So talking about the chemical composition, so I'm talking about chemical properties. So if we compare between the physical and chemical one, you will find that the physical properties observe without changing the identity of the substance, while the chemical properties is observed only when the identity change. So if I notice that the paper is white, I can observe the shape and the color of it. When I will observe the chemical property of this paper, if I burn this paper, so if the paper burns, so it has another chemical property, so this is another issue. So if anything change, so this is related to chemical property, as you can see. Change with CH as chemical with CH2. Some physical properties as the state, which mean that maybe it will be solid or liquid or gas, or the volume, how much space something takes, or as the mass, measure how much matter inside it, or the color or odor or hardness, if it's soft or hard, the density, relative mass to volume, and we took law of it before, the density equal mass over volume if we want to calculate the density. And the solubility, how easy something dissolve when I have two things and I dissolve one substance into the other, so this is also another physical property. And conductivity mean if this substance is conductive or conductor or insulator. So some materials could be a conductive, and others can be insulator, as we took before, regarding to the electricity or the thermal energy. Then we have ductility. The meaning of ductility, how easy something bend. How can I coil something like the wires? I can easily coil the copper in the wire. So this is, we call it ductility. So also I'm talking about something from outside, so this is a physical one. Then we have luster, how shiny something is. Maybe we can find some substances are shiny and some of them as dull, so the luster of it, and some of them look metallic and some of them look pearly, so you can observe this also from outside. Then we have malleability. What's the meaning of malleability? It looks like the ductility, but by some other how easy something can be flattened into a sheets. So if I have aluminium as rocks, we get it out from the mountains, and we want to flatten it or press it to make aluminium foil, so this is, we call it malleability. Then we have the 3 points, the 3 main points, which is freezing point, melting point, and the boiling point. And 3 of them is referred to how we change the state from one state to another. As in freezing, the temperature, it's the temperature that makes the substance turn from liquid into solid, while the melting point is the temperature that a substance turns from a solid into liquid, and the boiling point is the temperature that substance turns from a liquid into gases. So let's talk with in each one in much details. So if I'm talking about the color, how the object absorb and reflect light. If I observe these rocks, some of them is transparent, the other is blue, the other is yellow, so how they reflect light, so I can see the color of it. Then the texture. Also the texture is another kind of physical property. Maybe the texture will be rough, maybe it will be smooth, so this is also a physical property. Then we move to the temperature. Temperature means how much kinetic energy inside or between the particles is. As we took it before, the temperature measures the kinetic energy of the particles. So when they move faster, the temperature will increase in it. So this is also another physical property. And the mass, the amount of matter in an object. We know that we can measure the mass by using balance, and we have different units like the gram or kilogram. So we are not playing or doing anything to change the identity of the matter itself. And number 5 is the volume. If I want to measure the space this object is taking, so I will measure if it's regular shape like a box, I will calculate the length and the width and the height, and I will multiply them and get the volume of this box. And if it's related to something irregular or to the liquids, I'm gonna use the graduated cylinder, and I measure the volume with milliliters or liters, or also cubic centimeters. Number 6 is the density. What is the density? The density is the ratio of mass to volume, reflected the degree of packing of particles in matter. So this refers to how the objects could sink or float over the water. We took before that if we are talking about the substance itself and we found it float over the water, this means that the density of this substance is less than 1, because we know that the density of the water is 1. While if this thing sink down, so this is mean that the density of the substance is more than 1, so it sank down. Then number 7 is the luster. We took it also before. Luster mean the way the substance reflect light. Some lusters are metallic, some of them is non-metallic, some is glassy, some pearly, and some of them is dull. Number 8 is the ductility. The ductility is the ability of the substance to stretch into wires or to coil. So this is another physical property. Number 9, malleability. Malleability is the ability of the substance to be hardened, flat, and to retain the new shape. So if I want to flat any object or any substance by melting it and making in sheets, so I'm gonna call this malleability. Number 10 is the state, and we know that the state may be solid or liquid or gas. So if I'm describing things from outside, I can easily recognize if it's solid or liquid or gas. The last 3 points is the melting, freezing point, and the boiling point. And if I get example like the water, we know that the melting point equals the freezing point, which is 0. This is the point where the water start to melt, or the water will start to freeze and change from state to another. And the boiling point is another one, the temperature which made the liquid becomes a gas or start to evaporate. So this is, we call it the boiling point. Well, then when we move to the chemical property, it's a trait of matter that can only be observed if a substance has the property. Like what? The process of testing the chemical property, the substance change the composition, so it's always changed. So when I see change, this means that I'm talking about chemical property. So does the substance chemically react with something else? When we see the reaction, we know that we are talking about chemical property. Like what? If I consider the reactivity with air or with oxygen, it causes rusting to the iron or tarnishing the silver or copper or brass. So you can find there is a new substance is formed here, and I cannot return it back again to the first state. And if we talked about the reactivity with water, some substance is highly reactive with water, like the sodium. If I put it in the water, it will react and explode. So this is also another chemical property. Some substances have the ability to react with acids or bases. So two different substances, when I put them together, they form a new substance, and you can see different reactants or results at the end. Number 4, the combustion or being flammable, or the flammability. Some substances easily be flammable. If I just burn them, you find them burned, and some materials or substances cannot. So if I notice this and describe this, I'm talking about the chemical property of that thing. So to talk about chemical property, we must know the chemical composition of the substance, and we talked before the difference between the element, compound, and mixture. So as an example, if I give you the formula of the rust is Fe2O3, and the chemical formula for the water is H2O, and the chemical formula of the diamond, which is C, or the carbon. All chemical property are intensive, not are extensive. What's this mean? This is because that the chemical property never depend on how much of substance is present, but only on what kind of particle make up the substance. What I mean by this, if I'm giving you an example that I have two pieces of sodium, one of them is 1 gram and the other is 100 gram, and I put both of them in two different places with water. So do you think that both will react or only the biggest one? Yes, excellent. So both of them will react. So this means that I'm not concerning the mass or the volume of it. I'm just talking about the particles itself. So if it's reactive or not. So this is what I mean by that the chemical property are intensive, not extensive, not depending on the mass or the volume. Okay, so a characteristics property, if I'm talking about, we said that property that are characteristic and the property are not a characteristics. Thank you so much and enjoy the video, and we will do another one inshallah.